Morrow. Here. Hurt.
Here.
Poe.
Here.
Shanahan.
Here.
Christophe.
Here.
Carlton. Howitt.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we'll move to public comment. Anybody sign up for public comment?
Not this week.
Want us to stay on schedule.
Right.
You get 3 minutes. Please start with your name.
Sure, so my name is Maya Martinez, I'm a neighborhood leader, and everyone just calls me Lee. So I'm here to talk about section 6.03 that you talked about last time, which essentially said the mayor within 90 days after a vacancy can nominate and submit to the city council for appointment and the department head for 90 days and up to 90 days extra if needed. The question that you're faced with is, should any appointments include the appropriate length of time the department head should serve in interest capacity? And I say yes, because 180 days is basically 6 months long. And that's a very long time for a department leader who is directly impacting services to the residents to go vacant. I'm gonna give you a perfect example of what happened in my neighborhood. All the time I'm gonna give you examples of what happened in my experience as a neighborhood leader. So last year, Park Director A resigned in June 2025. In September 2025, the city council was already in their final stages of approving the city budget. In December 2025, Parks Director B was appointed. That time gap, that 6-month time gap, really stalled a park project in my neighborhood that I have been in discussion since 2024 with the first director. Because that first director was gone, funding got pushed back. And now we have to wait until 2027 for money to be put in the budget so that park can be upgraded and redeveloped. I really do believe, in my opinion, having that leadership gap does disrupt services to the residents. Where I work at now, whenever there's like a leadership change, we immediately get together, if it's planned, we immediately get together and we talk about, hey, who's gonna take this project, who's gonna take that project, so we can make sure we have our services on track without any delay. Sometimes people leave and you don't get noticed, that happens, but that's where we always have a succession plan in place, we always have a bench, so people are ready to pick up and get into that leadership role quickly, so it doesn't delay services. Keep in mind, these department heads are impacting resident services every day, stormwater and mobility, code enforcement, parks and rec. I don't know right now how the city manages leadership change. I do think it's worth a discussion to find out, number one, what is the city department leadership change practices? And number two, what safeguards are in place to make sure that resident services are not disrupted, especially if there's been projects that have been in place with neighborhood leaders, and then all of a sudden somebody leaves. I want to go back to the charter, right? The charter is more than city council versus the mayor. It's bigger. It's about the residents, okay? Politicians come, politicians go. The residents are still here, they're taxpayers, and they contribute to financing the city. I would ask that you consider inviting the chief of staff or the head of human resources to talk about what are they doing behind the scenes to safeguard the residents when there's leadership changes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the prior meeting minutes from April 28th, 2026.
Make a motion.
I can move it. Yeah, I'm gonna make a motion.
Get your motion.
Thank you.
You can test me a motion.
Can you, oh, I'm sorry, okay, you can seek a motion. I won't seek a motion.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Discussion?
What was the motion?
To approve the
A
minutes.
minute,
Ah, okay. I'm sorry, I got confused in the discussion. No other questions.
sorry, I'll speak louder.
Right.
All right, then moving properly, oh, sorry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Thank you, motion approved. And then, pass it over to Mr. Ross.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys. Rebecca and Ron, speak up if at any time you can't hear or we're not paying attention to you, please, just because I may not see you. Okay, objective for today, as a recap, we managed last time we completed our review. Of Articles 1 through 5. That took us 6 meetings, not counting January review, the fact that that was very much an orientation. Meeting. So 6 meetings, we got through 1 to 5. Today, as a goal, again, it all depends on our conversation. Hoping maybe we can get through Article 6. We do have one action item we're waiting still on an answer from the city, and I can get to that in a minute. And then finances, which is Article 7, which also covers budgeting, some other information. We have, and I'll say this before we adjourn, we have 7 meetings left through August. To get through 6, 7, all the way to 11. Some of those articles should not be as, what's the word? They should be more of a formality to review, but I don't want to presume that. Hopefully that'd be the case. So I certainly think we're on track to finish, it really depends on when. But we'll get to that before we adjourn. Let me jump into it with you guys. There again, just tricking our Zoom friends, literally. Okay, so last time we approved 6.01, 6.02, we got to 6.03. And I think I encourage you guys to dig in there a little bit before tonight, and also section 7. Going back to this question, I wrote what I think is a pretty comprehensive email to the city attorney and to Marley, asking for more information around the implications and effects and impacts from the change from appoint and confirm to nominate and appoint, with the council having more of a role than prior. And Marley said she didn't think we'd be able to get that information by today. In fact, we did not. So hopefully by next time, so that we can continue to close these out and move forward as opposed to circle back. So that's where we stand on 6.03. I believe we're ready to move to 6.04, but let me ask the group, is there anything else here anyone wants to talk about? I mean, we're gonna come back here one way or another, so I thought we'd just come back as one block, okay. All right. Let's jump into it and see how we make out. All right, so 6.04, bond. All officers and employees shall be bonded under a surety bond issued by a surety company. I'm summarizing, you guys can see this. Any change, I'm not gonna read all of this, any changes to 6.04, I presume not, but I should. We do with 6.04, auto says great. 6.05 is around taking the oath or discharging duties. Any changes to 6.05? No one wants to go in place? Yes. Salary 6.06. Salaries of officers of the city may be increased or decreased by concurrence of the mayor and majority, no fewer than 4 votes of the city council, which concurrence shall be documented, etc. Increase or decrease anytime by concurrence of the mayor and majority, no fewer than 4 votes of the entire city council. Again, this is for officers of the city. Any changes at 6.06. Let's go close.
I'm reading honestly.
There will be a time when we get talking, I know it's coming, but not yet, not yet. 7, continuance. Subject to provisions of the following section of all officers, departments, and boards now existing under the provisions of prior charter ordinance and duties not specifically provided are continued in existence. So the last part, really the important part, 6.07.
So that is duplicated almost verbatim in another section in the charter.
Okay,
I think it is verbatim except for one word.
or one that comes after.
One that came before, this section about an article about boards. But even if it does come after, do we need a duplication if? If the language is there essentially verbatim in another section? Redundant, so.
Where's the other section on it? I must send you,
Yeah.
I didn't pick that up, I read it.
In Article 5 departments, 5.01.
And other departments? Pretty sure.
5.01 departments.
So right in the beginning.
Yeah, mayor, may.
Entertain 6.07. So,
In 5.01, did I need something out of a comma and it's
Where does it say that on forest?
So if you flip back on between.
the comment. Raj, there's a comment after me.
there's a lot.
There is a comment. Okay,
No, I was saying at the end here, it just ends.
okay.
I have a comma, or it might be a period, I don't know.
It goes.
It does.
Yes.
I don't know why it's not there. I started putting everything in, it's easier.
The word the is for mayor, you want to stick where, but you don't.
But in any case, what's the, we can.
Was that the same as 6.0?
Okay, let's just see what it is.
Back to the title.
6.7. Look, it's seven.
Okay. 6.08 and 5.01, the first sentence.
I don't see the same language in here, is that because I didn't put it in? Okay. So are you suggesting that we think about whether or not we need it in both places and it's duplicative?
Right.
I'm gonna, can't take a look at that after the meeting.
Yeah, we can track the language to make sure there's nothing.
I'm gonna make another two guys section.
That was 6.0.
There are different bodies of people in each one of those references, so I think it's a referral back to the.
Yeah.
We're talking about, maybe it was way.
One button was the part of the.
0.07 is the one. Oh, he's talking about 8 or 7.
Yeah, I thought you said it's different, so.
Let me answer about 7 and then maybe just.
Oh, sorry.
That's why I was confused, 6.07, this was. No changes to 7.
I was just really excited.
No way.
To get to my photo.
So 6.08, now I'm talking, oh yeah, that is very similar, isn't it? So this is where we're gonna look at. And. Look. Whether.
The break off is that here for words.
Needed. Let me ask though, in terms of substance, we don't, whatever we, no changes 608, just to check on language, okay? Otherwise. Okay. That was really easy. Good, let's keep going. Now we're moving to 7. We do have some questions putting on 7. So the first one should be pretty easy, just fiscal year, October to September 30th. On the 30, we good with that one? Okay, 7.01. No change, it is.
The state law.
Right.
Right.
What we can really do about that.
It's okay. Okay, so 7.02 is budget. We talked a lot about budget by virtue of other topics that relate to budget. Related to the council's budget, related to budget, then it's related to the process, related to the authorities therein. But here we are, finally with 7.02. I want to first hit the questions and then come back to the substance, and let's see where you guys are on this. This one here, this question was nearly duplicative to another one, so I made the decision to add in the same answer provisionally because they're almost identically asked. So here, should the council be allowed to amend the budget to hire additional staff, carry out legislative duties? There's another question in 2.04. And it's more, this was city council attorney, I missed that, sorry, should the city council attorney be allowed to hire additional staff? And outside attorney subject to collector approval, so strike that in where I was thinking was just council. So leave this off for a second here, in fact, I'm gonna take that out, my bad. Yeah, I did it too less. I can do this real quick, backwards. So apologies for that. So one is, can city council amend the budget to hire additional staff? If we remember, the CFO did talk about the process by which the council could do that. By virtue of going to the CFO, the budget office, asking for that to be done, of course, then it comes back to council, I believe is my understanding. For approval or denial. The next one. Again, I'm just gonna get these guys read so you have them in your minds. The council be required to have a separate standalone vote on the issuance of debt. The council be able to initiate amendments to the budget during the current fiscal year. And this is where I mentioned that. There's a process to account for that if they wish to bring it to the CFO. They can't do it unilaterally though. And then regarding budgetary accountability funds. Approved by the city council, such as allocations for projects like paving, be required to be expended. Within the same fiscal year in which the budget is approved. Or within a defined and specified time period once authorized by city council. So this is really about time bound in budgetary appropriations is how I understand it. And we can talk about that. So. I'm gonna start with the content over there, we'll have that. So 702, first bullet, no money may be dispersed from city treasury except. Pursuance of appropriations made by city council, are we okay with that one? 7.02.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
You're doing, well, okay, I would say.
check. You agree with that? This next one's longer. So this talks about when they're preparing the annual budget. Presented to the city council no less than 45 days before the expiration of each fiscal year. I think they said they did move it earlier. And which shall be classified according to departments and divisions of government, shall list the salaries of officers and employees of the position where no officer or employee may exist. Further subdivided to personal services, etc., materials, equipment, contractual services. Other services in charge of debt services, capital outlay, and some proposed budget shall show the same detail. The comparative disbursements in all sections, so it's really kind of describing how it's broken into pieces around the budget. This is really just talking about presenting a budget based on a timeline, any changes to second floor. Those ones come twice, okay? Let's use.
Why do they do 45 days, just a question, can you say that? Mid-August,
Why did they do it?
yeah,
I don't know why 45 days was selected, but they're trying to coincide the exercise with the fiscal year process, is what I would understand it.
right,
So. And then I think if they get, it creates complications if you wait too long, it's not new fiscal years going, and you haven't decided what your budget will be, et cetera.
And you might lose some money if you don't either get appropriated. I don't know, I don't know the city rules, I know the state level, if you don't have appropriated.
by a certain time, okay,
We'll go through these and then we'll come back and see what you guys think about what our answers to these questions would be. I received the budget of public hearing should be called and held by the council. 1 week's notice, published in at least 2 newspapers, general circulation, published in the city. Said notice, time, place, purpose of the hearing. And really allow the citizens to participate. With their criticisms, recommendations, etc. In such hearing shall be held at least 3 days prior to the final adoption said budget. Again, probably just making sure that in case any actions are taken, there's time to do so. Any changes to that bullet there from the group? Okay. 3. Good. Well, for shorter council authorized to make such changes in said budget. That it deems necessary for the proper economic operation of use of government and the budget as adopted by the city council. Then shall be provided for all other ordinances of the city council. Questions on that one? Any changes to that one? Great. And finally, I think finally, did this last time, yes, finally. Exercising the power of veto, the mayor shall be authority to disapprove the budget or any appropriation passed by city council in full or in sections. Or by specific items in any item section part of the budget matter. Or any appropriation vetoed by the mayor shall not become effective. Unless passed over their veto by a 2/3 majority vote of all members of the city council, I guess. Guess that's clear. So the mayor may reject the budget or any appropriation. But it's not effective unless 2/3 of the council agree. Did I read that right, Ken?
It's trying to track the ordinance veto process.
Okay.
The mayor has the ability to veto, but it includes a line item veto. That can be not just the entire budget, but one specific section of it. So maybe overcome by
By 2/3.
2/3 of the entire council as opposed to just 2/3 of who have it.
Okay, thank you. Maybe you'll help with that. Any changes to the last bullet to this one, I'm just going to less about. Right, well. Good news is, love it. The either good or bad is, we need to talk about the question, so. Question one. Council be allowed to amend the budget to hire additional staff. To carry out legislative duties, again, I think we talked about this quite a bit. And
It was no.
I'll summarize, you guys tell me if I'm wrong. Council's part of the group that puts forward the content for their piece of the budget, as do departments. That goes through the normal budgetary process. And if they wish through their budget to account for hiring more staff, that would be part of the process along with any other categories of budgetary funds they're seeking. And again, then that goes through. So to amend the budget, I think, but I'm gonna let you guys tell me, I think what we're saying here is they can participate in the budget process per normal, and that would account for anything more they needed.
That's not a clear question.
Right.
Okay, I mean, you know, if it's what you think it is, okay, I agree with
Yeah,
that.
maybe.
But if, should they be allowed to amend it if that were to be amended after it was already in place? So I remember some questions from back when, right, what do you do halfway through the year? Should they be allowed to unilaterally amend it? I mean, what is that? The answer would be no, right, unilaterally, this process, right, so.
No, thank you, yeah, right, exactly, so.
I feel like we discussed this earlier and decided this, it sort of keeps coming up in each one of these different segments, but we've discussed this a lot.
No, we did. I think your answer is no to unilaterally, yes to participate in the budget process.
They have a
Okay.
role.
I just
And
wanted,
this, I believe we touched on it in the CFO series, so there would need to be a financial resolution and it would pass through the typical process, right? If it was in here.
thank you guys.
Okay.
I'll make that note. And by the way, Kathleen, you're right, we've got different flavors of some of these questions and we've really. I think run them to the ground with speakers in on our own. This was more specific, we haven't really talked about this, should council be required to have a separate standalone vote on the issuance of any debt.
Another question. What exactly is that question? Stand on the vote on issuance of any debt.
Do you know more about this, Ken, maybe, in terms of what we're reading the charter?
There are some charters around the state that require separate out, if you issue any kind of debt, that you have a specific agenda item and vote on that, as opposed to having it within the budget or other process. That's my best guess as to how they're interpreting it. It's a way of drawing more attention to the fact that you're issuing debt as opposed to including it with other items.
Is the issuance of debt exclusively a city council prerogative, or does that include the mayor too?
It would be the same as any other spend of money, that would be subject to be general.
So is the question insinuating that the city council can do it alone?
I didn't take it that way. I took it as, do you need to separate out from other discussions, whether it be within the budget or elsewhere? That you have a requirement to single that out.
And this is the city council's asking for this authority?
These are just questions we received from them.
I wouldn't think they want that.
Many, sometimes questions
It's a lot.
received just meeting, can we do this, but
Should city council they have a separate vote on it, it's still.
Like council votes to appropriate funds for something,
Okay.
not how to. Right?
That's issues of debt.
Right,
This is just insurance debt.
Right, there are places that require that, mostly for the attention, that it gets its own item and people can focus on it. But it's not that common.
Maybe I'm wrong, but my understanding is that in the issuance of bonds that must come to council for a vote, and that's only one form of debt. But are there other forms of debt maybe wrapped up in the budgeting process where the city council doesn't have a standalone vote? In contrast with maybe a bond issuance, would those might come on a case by case basis?
We tend to use the term bond to mean any kind of debt, when it comes to local government, in terms of the constitutional requirements and all. So when we say bond, it pretty much is any kind of borrowing that
talking with a couple of members of the council, I think what they're trying to ask here is they vote on, say, something for $1 million, and what's happened is it wasn't clear at the time of the vote how much of that $1 million was gonna be debt. And I think that's frustrated some members of the council.
Okay.
Talking to them, it seems like they would have changed their vote or thought about it differently if they knew a large portion of it was debt. So they're asking, hey, yes, we approved this project for $1 million. Should we have a secondary vote later down the line when we know how to pay a certain percentage of it being debt?
Thank you, that's helpful.
Yeah.
You can bring cash to get council to approve the project, but then once it's approved, issue debt, take the cash that was on that project and use it to get another one approved. I'm not saying that it's being done in that way, but that essentially is the outcome of not having a separate vote specifically on using debt to finance the project.
So Garrett, they wanted to just have a freestanding, make sure they had all the info. Of exactly how much debt.
Yeah, it's like you approve a project for $10 million and then when the project is budgeted and figured out and there's a contractor selected. They would come back to city council and say, here's how we're gonna pay for it, and you have to vote to approve this portion of debt.
Don't they have to approve any debt issuance on behalf of the city?
I don't believe so. I think they approve a budget and funding, but not debt specifically.
The result of that being that you're gonna get far down the line on a big project and then have it stop because there is no consensus on whether to have.
That could be a pitfall, yeah. You could have a great idea that everyone supports, and then it comes down to it, it's, hey, we're gonna borrow a bunch of money to make this happen, and the vote changes. But I think to Stephen's point, the issue is you can get a project approved and then they could borrow all the money to pay for it and take the approval of those funds and pay for something else.
Rob, is that accurate? There has no. Who has involved in the decision-making process and issue debt, whatever debt, whatever it is.
I think it will come down to what was the agenda item that got presented to council. The item may have authorized all financial mechanisms, something along those lines. I'd be very surprised if there's not some level of council approval of the issuance of debt. What I would expect though is you would put in the agenda item, we'll handle this, whatever financially is reasonable at the moment, something along those lines.
What I was really getting at is where will the mayor and the city council respectively play? But it doesn't seem very clear to me, that answer, there's no offense, but that doesn't seem clear to me. And I don't know that we don't need clarity on exactly what we're talking about.
Should I say,
This is-
should I say, well,
Yeah,
Yeah.
tell us exactly what the process is, what, Kathleen asked a good question, what was the mayor play? I'm just not up to speed on that.
That seems like a great thing to put back to the. As to how they handle.
Yeah,
Tell us exactly what you've been doing, what's the process, we can get some clarity.
So the mayor versus council roles.
Yeah.
How it's been done to date.
issuance of debt.
it's an important question though, because I think the city's debt is just $1 million.
1.68 doubled since 2021.
Well, what's you say,
Just
Billion for the
debt? Wow, doubled since 21.
But we still have, what's our rating? I mean, it sort of is in balance with your
It actually went up, the rate went up.
Yeah.
About that.
So, but I think Alan asked a really good question. When you said, how does it affect projects too, because you have to understand, I don't know, I mean, I think that's a. If you decide you're gonna do a whatever significant construction project and you have to commit debt to get the. Project going, and then you say to people, oh, well, that's gonna be under review in 6 months because. I think your prices of your price of a lot of stuff will go up.
Right.
So we should really have a conversation with somebody about that does it.
CFO.
So 4 things to ask, and I can take the lead on this, the respect of the mayor versus council roles. How it's been done today, issues caused by current practices and how could this impact projects? Does that cover it? Okay, cool.
Where is it in the charter, is it something y'all trying to have added to it, or is it something that you want negative?
No, that's the question.
Question.
It's not in.
Okay, it's not with an end, it's not. Okay,
Okay. So that's one of those cases where these came in cold, we just need.
Are these recent questions?
No, we got the whole batch in the beginning, and I tried to map them best I could to the sections that refer to. Yes, I'd like, but I think these are the last. I think everything else is blank and empty and ready to go.
like, something with that goes under bonds too. Yeah.
Yeah, it probably does, but did it with respect to. This, we'll get the answer, we'll know. Okay, we have two wonder guys. Should Tampa City Council be able to initiate amendments to the city budget during, I think this is covered, during the current fiscal year, and I said, no, city council may go through the CFO's office, normal process. This is really what we learned, they cannot do, they can't do it with your EA. But there's a process, if they wish for something to be injected in that by virtue of going through the CFO, comes from the mayor's office and then they see it, so.
So the answer is the process exists.
Yeah, and I just wrote no for Dennis, can he explain, there's a way to do this? It's just not gonna rely on, I think we were good with that.
Well, you just throw this open for a discussion, because I do know that this is an issue that. Some members of the city council care deeply about, because if you do have to go through the CFO. It's something the city council can't do itself, so. The question is, should the city council have an ability to initiate changes to the budget? In here,
Say initiate, start the asset, initiate. I think by definition, you start the process, and I think what I've heard is they do it.
They can't direct staff to bring them a resolution. There's a difference between initiating the process and triggering the amendment coming on the agenda. And that being something that is solely vested in the authority of the mayor to direct. Just because they can initiate it doesn't mean the mayor doesn't have to sign off on it on the back end. I think there's a difference there between. Can they bring the item forward versus can they not bring the item forward at all?
And I think
I don't understand that, that's the question, is they able to initiate amendments? Can they initiate amendments?
No.
They can't initiate an amendment.
I thought the CFO said there were
But
been able to change the syllabus. And most of them came from the city council, so there must be some process.
They were requested by the city council, but they were initiated by the administration of the CFO.
Okay, well, so they can ask the CFO prepares the documentation.
And the
And then it
CFO
goes. CFO's,
But it's not rough. The CFO or the administration could say, no, they're not even gonna bring it forward. The risk of them bringing it forward is that council could pass it and then force the mayor to have to veto it, but council could then override it with a 2/3 majority. That's why the initiation is a very important, that word is very important.
Specific.
Because if it can't get to them, it's never gonna happen anyway. I think with a lot of these, the word initiate was used with that in mind.
so if they told them, if they asked the CFO for a provisional, whatever you guys have to process, they have to prepare the process documentation. That it would automatically go before city council, and it would go into the process, there would be no, and then the mayor could veto it, and they'd have to override it if they disagree.
But there would be a path to getting it done, even overriding the mayor's veto, but if it can't even get to them in the first place, it can't get on the agenda, it's DOA.
It's more of the Senate wanted to get it.
I don't think they can override.
If the mayor vetoed it, then they could override it on a 4-7 vote.
Yes, but it had to get to them to begin with.
I understand,
Yeah.
but no.
Right, exactly,
If we
yes.
agree, you can trigger this to start.
Right.
I guess what you're saying, Stephen, is we really can trigger, it. You can hope someone else agrees that it needs to be put in play. Right, in other words, if the CFO says, or even the mayor says, no, I'm not even gonna put this forward, then I think what you're saying, is the council's done, there's nothing else that I can.
And how often does that happen?
Oh, I don't know that,
Yeah, I think,
but procedurally, I think that's the
Yeah.
difference. The word unilateral isn't being used because I don't think it's enough unilateral because the mayor has to sign everything anyway.
Right.
It's a matter of getting to that point where the other members of council are asked, do you want to override this with a 2/3 majority? They can't even get to that point if they can't get on these
So the
shows.
CFO gave us that answer. Didn't answer the question.
And this isn't about the council's budget, there's a distinction, this is about the city budget. So before it was more about the council's budget, I think we were talking about that, this is the city's budget.
I think it possibly could apply to issues that we've discussed in the past, like for instance, if there was need for resources for a special investigation. I don't hear that there's any appetite on the city council for
Line item.
or a fund to tip into. Right, what they would prefer is to be able to initiate a budget question in mid-year.
and does that affect, like, who would that affect? Is it additional money for the city council to do their work, or is it affecting the administration?
Could be reset, and it's a city budget, so it would include council and everything else. We talk specifically about council's needs for the funds. And what that looks like in the budget cycle, this I think is that plus, so this is really anything. It's really the concept of starting the process. And can they today do that? The answer is they can hope, but they can't make it happen.
They can only request.
If we
Right,
look
right.
closely at all of their motions, it'll say motion to request staff to attend and it always, it very rarely says direct.
Can I give a concrete example to make sure I understand this the right way, because I don't wanna feel informed. And have a informed decision, so, because for example, say a council member has a park in their district that they know needs a playground or something. They could make a request for funding for that within the appropriate budget. But then the administration would have to say, yes, we will comply with that request and we will fulfill whatever action. But you're saying is, if the administration says no, that park is not on our agenda right now, then it's dead and council has no way to then. Get the money for the park or whatever it is. Is that, do I understand that process?
Well, the request would be motion to request staff to appear and give a report on the possibility of doing X, Y, or Z. That's how it typically plays out.
They get the report, they say, yeah, we have some extra funding, council says, great, let's do it. I mean, at some point, the administration would have to say, okay.
There is no motion to amend the budget to add this project. That does not, that's the way.
So it only comes from,
It's one direction.
that's where I was getting at.
Which I think, normally, I think we discussed last time, the administration does this something like 200 times a year, that they ask for additional money. But the council can't do that, and it could be for something different like a park, but it could be something more substantive than or of greater urgency or importance. And if the mayor, vetoed it, it's still a high bar to overcome a veto. So regardless, it would not be an easy process anyway, but at least there would be the possibility if council felt strongly about something that they could.
But he-
It's a high bar.
Well, the overlook.
Then what's the override? What's that? Is it two
Assuming
or is it 4?
5 of the total.
Override veto.
5 is it?
This is super majority.
But to Kathleen, your point, he did say.
He inferred there was 180 changes, and most of those came from the council, so that was not administration changes to the budget, those were whatever the Stephen process that you just explained, they were recommendations or requests. And they processed the paperwork, they went and they were accommodated, so. I don't know, I mean, that's what I took from his presentation, 180 done in the next year. It's a lot.
So that gets us to the question. That would lend itself towards saying there isn't a problem, I mean, not as much of a problem because. These things do get initiated.
Well, it'd be nice to have examples of why their non-initiation isn't working, because I would be worried about opening up the Pandora's box to agencies running departments with everybody sort of changing your budget every week or every month, so you have to calibrate on, but you know, I don't know what they're trying to solve except having some authority budget.
Who asked? Who asked it?
Well, these questions came from council in its entirety. Where we're always able to go back and have them tell us,
Clarify.
that's a recurring theme with these, because we're getting kind of a raw question. So would we like to do that and
Yes.
and say our understanding is plenty of amendments are flowing through this process in the system. Missing here that we have to discuss.
So we were
Yeah,
to,
maybe it shows you come to, so I'd ask the.
And I would ask the CFO what calibrators could be put on it, so you're not disrupting. Like agencies or departments, you to just run their workload. But, you know, I don't know, 180 changes seems like a lot for a relatively small budget, but. Not,
Can you say the beginning of that again, Kathleen asked the CFO?
if somebody initiated, like if this authority was given to the city council, or they didn't have to send it and do a request, it would be a direct, and we use these words instead of request, direct. If they want changes for a park or money. How would that work? You know, would they have to take money from other projects? Would the department just be said, make this happen? The mayor could still veto it. They could override it, so you go through that process, but
So is the question going to the CFO and the city council?
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of it, the answer has to come from CFO. So the first one's more. The council, this is more CFO.
Well, I don't know, he said, yeah, they could ask, I mean, that was his answer, was yes, they could ask us. I think who else, Steve, go ahead. I'm just gonna say, who else could we ask, maybe they had a CFO in here.
and were there 180 changes or 180 requests?
I don't think we got. Communication. I think the question has been told.
Right.
But I don't believe that, were there proper issues,
Yeah.
okay, what would this look like? Tell us how it would work if it was.
Does it take years to get
Impacted.
I think the question would be. More so centered on circumstances when those requests would come. How often does that occur?
right,
And
exactly.
if he says zero, then
That's authority versus reality, which is, you know, and I just would wanna put a calibrator on. How much can they do, more than 10% of the budget is in this flood state, I don't know.
and how much time it takes for things to get approved, if it's taking. Let's say 12 months to get it, well, I know I'm being dramatic, but if it's taking very long, then maybe if there's a deadline of approval. From the CFO on whether or not funding maybe.
So I have to face the follow up on these. Where's the underlying issue from the city council on this question? Secondly, if in fact the council could direct this process so that they would rely on the mayor to put it through, how would that work if they had that authority? What would that look like? I think another question is, we heard the 180, but I think we should ask in writing, how many BAs actually resulted from city council requesting that of the mayor? Just
And how many that were denied, Stephen asked you.
Oh, that's a great question, yeah. Yeah, that's a great point.
But is that a question for CFO or for council?
I think this.
I mean, it should say answer, actually doesn't.
Say
Say how long?
How many were denied?
No, I mean.
Denied. Oh, I'm asking how long does it take?
Or we're not rep forward. So.
I mean, whatever answers we get, the other side's gonna know, it's all. Let's go on to the next one, I think we covered that one.
And I think Ashley's point about the length of time that it takes, I think is also important. So that's what she was saying, how long does it normally take to go through this process? The CFO would answer that.
The process by which council would
You ask
request,
for the thing, it goes back, and then it gets directed to the vote, all that, how long does that normally take? Ask the CFO.
so that would just be the budget process time.
Yeah.
It's not just that.
Budget amendment.
So how long does it take today?
Yeah, I'm on part of the state. It's just an email and a slip. I don't know.
I mean, they go on consent.
What?
They go on the consent.
They go pretty quickly, I would think, but I don't know, yeah, it's a good question.
And you mean the VA process,
As well.
we mean the VA process that's result of the council asking for something, right? We're talking about specific in that scenario, because all the VAs stem from the administration as well, without the city council. Based on where they're financially, what the departments need, that's what we're asking.
The process he's referring to, where the CFO.
They go to the CFO, yes, okay, so it is. Yeah, CC requested, okay. My guess is they have a window for this regardless of the source. They have a window, they do, that's what you gotta find. Okay, let's move on to question 4. You got ready for 4? Ready, going good, okay. Regarding budgetary accountability, should funds approved by the city council, such as projects like paving, be required to either be expended within the fiscal year? Obviously, some projects take longer than the fiscal year, big infrastructure, for example, just to say that. And then, or defined within a period in a specified time period once authorized by city council. So it's really saying if we give you these funds, are we attaching a time limit to those funds being used for a given? As required to be expended. Sorry,
That's what we're now.
I know, I understand the question, but I mean. You heard the government, like it's. That is just not anything that's ever done.
Typically, I know one thing that causes this to happen is grants, because they have deadlines.
Yeah.
So grants are gonna have deadlines for funds. For others that don't, it's more, I mean, I'll just share my thoughts, but I'm not sure how the city does it. A project is a high level plan estimate, and it's a detailed plan estimate, part of that detailed plan is, you know, it's design, construction, procurement, all those things. And then that becomes, I'm guessing the administration says, yeah, that looks about right, I have no problem, and off they go. And of course, those times can change. Shortages, unforeseen circumstances, you get the time, and you learn something. So I think, I mean, clearly we care about things being done by a given time, that may or may not be separate from the funding that you need to get it done. And the authority
Is there time on the money though? I mean, I don't know, at the state, like you would be given money. And if you didn't spend it by the end of the, I mean, none of the feds, at the end of the fiscal year, it goes back, you have to reappropriate again.
Well-
Unless it's tied to a project.
Two different things, I remember. The story I did, an investigation at a state where a small city received federal grants to replace the police department's radio system. Grants were appropriate, but you had to spend it within a certain amount of time. The mayor never did, because he didn't want to.
Oh.
So the city lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal money because of the mayor did not, it's a priority. I get it, and so this gets into a policy issue. Let's say the city, council, appropriates funding for whatever project. If the mayor doesn't agree with it, or there's no enthusiasm for it, could the money, even though it was passed by the city council, just just sit on the shelf for a prolonged period of time? And I know, there is the budgetary process with the mayor to have a line item veto, whatever. But the question is whether projects approved by the city council languish because just the money has never been spent.
So
it could be appropriated in the budget, they both approve it, but then it's not really allocated or implemented or signed.
are we presupposing we know that that's this question? Because that's a different issue. That's basically not spending your grant dollars. Well, like when we go to our board, you know, because I'm running our CDBGDR, right? You know, we get their approval on projects and then we do the budget amendments to allocate funds. Now, this is a reimbursement grant. But in that write-up, we said that all these funds must be expended by May 15, 2031.
I mean, it could be a situation where it's being grant based that you have whether it's state or federal funding, right, matches, but it could be on something that does not involve grants, you know, whatever, it's a city budgetary issue.
I think
It's, from a grant standpoint, any of the reasons why you would wanna spend it quickly could also be used as a reason to not, as a reason to explain why it takes so long, because grants take typically more energy and more effort to prepare the documentation and have, you know, a third party or, you know, a fourth party have to review every contract that comes in. I mean, there are so many reasons why projects don't move forward. And I just don't see how this can be practically, and my impression is this is about getting projects off the back burner and moving them forward. But I don't know how you force an executive, you know, branch of government to spend money when it's not that easy to spend government money to begin with. I mean, there's so many
Well, and if you don't,
steps that have to go into that.
and if you don't, and it doesn't get built, it doesn't get built, like what would the repercussion be anyway?
Well, typically people get into trouble for spending government money too quickly without doing the right steps. And so this is sort of the flip side of that, which is, you know, how do we make sure they spend the money more quickly? But I just, to me, there's an inherent conflict in the question and just the way the process works. I understand why it's being asked, I just don't know what the solution is. I don't think it's forcing, you know, money to be spent that doesn't have a contract ready, or, you know, whatever that issue might be.
It could be a lot of reasons why it's not.
There could be a lot of reasons.
I think it's a great question, time is money, these projects that get approved by council, if they don't get done, things get more expensive and then the whole metric changes. But for our attorney, is it legal to put a time on things that are approved, like if council allocated funding towards gating, they put on there, you know, project completed within X months, you're allowed to attach time.
Well, it would then roll into the contract for that. They'd be mandating the executive negotiated contract that would be done with the second.
But the general contractor hasn't finished.
Right, the question.
I mean, it's not anyone's fault, the general contractor's taking longer to do a job, what happens?
Well, you have
Well,
LDs, they have LDs and they pay, so they accept the
Well, that-
contract that they.
Even
They don't
putting that
choose
aside,
to
Yeah, really finish, you know, talk.
even putting that aside, the administration is, right, the executive and would have to push it forward, even if the council had a time limitation on it, right?
Yeah, this may go to being more the politics of it than
Yeah,
the legal requirements. Do you want to have them require to come back and have a vote or do some kind of extension? Things more personal.
yeah,
That's what it sounds like to me, because at the end of the day, forcing the executive to act by a certain date, there's going to be another penalty for that,
right.
beyond control of the personals.
I think it's a really good question, and I know of many circumstances where there's been projects that haven't gotten delayed or haven't been done for many different reasons, not just political. But those projects today are twice what they would have cost when they were approved. So the premise, I appreciate the question. I would wanna know. I think you're right, I think it could come out of the politics.
I went ahead, Ashley, you're right.
Yeah, the consequence, we can't
What are you gonna?
bring down, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Put in spaces where development is not moving as quickly in certain areas in Tampa, and it kind of reflects back on that council person, because it looks bad on them, we've approved this fund for this to go through, okay, it's not, nothing's happening.
Yeah.
So now you're voting for you, or looking at you crazy. And I think that question is just, they're trying to figure out what can be done within this charter that can help push the project that they may have not necessarily promised, but said it would do something about. And that they're asking us, is there something we can do with this charter to help them do something?
I would just say, I think even the idea of having that in the language, I would be supportive of, even if it didn't necessarily have teeth behind it. I think that's a really important question. I can think of many circumstances where things are much more expensive and then. There's problems.
There's a cost element to it. There's also an element in terms of residents seeing the fruits of approved projects they want to use the fund.
Yeah.
So there's another element to that too, the benefit, the delayed benefit. Around that. What are we thinking if
But yeah, can I ask a question?
uh,
I mean, it seems to me that there are, a variety. As a person in my world, I'm frequently preparing resolutions, for instance, for boards of directors to approve projects, and then management has the task to implement the project. And I appreciate that that's a little bit different than what we're talking about here. But just to give you context for my frame of reference, there's a myriad of different variables that could cause a project, because when a project is approved, whatever that project might be, typically there's a lot of detail that are not included in the approval, right? And there's third-party variables, financing, decision-making, permitting. If it's a roadway project, there may be an easement that needs to be obtained from third parties. There's a variety of different reasons why a project may not go forward. And in some cases, they may be good reasons. How would we, I mean, the charter is, kind of constitutional at its level, right? It's not very prescriptive. What I would be a little bit concerned about is that we would be mandating something where there are either good reasons why it's slowed down, or there are third-party variables that have caused it to slow down that are beyond the control of the city, and how would we legislate that through through a charter amendment?
I totally agree with what you're saying, Ron. I think this would fall into, look, I think there are times that Congress, for political reasons, appropriates money for a weapon system that the Defense Department doesn't want, doesn't think it will work. And that's, there would be a good reason for the executive branch not to spend that money. What I'm thinking about here are projects that are approved by the city council and money appropriated for, but aside from the honest delays or factors that you're referring to, just don't ever happen for whatever reason. And so the question is, do they just linger as things that the city council has voted on and approved, but never go anywhere? Or do we want to at least have an accounting about why they don't?
Yeah, a report.
But I guess it goes back to a fundamental question of,
That's aspiration.
is the city council approval an act of authorizing the administration to do something, or is it a directive to the administration that they have to do something? Because I think this discussion, I don't fully know the answer to that question, but I think the discussion is presuming that it would be, in all instances, a directive from city council that administration has to do something, as opposed to permission to do something. And if it's permissive in nature, it would seem to me that budgeting something in many instances is permissive in nature. It doesn't direct that it has to happen. It just authorizes it to happen. It would also seem like it would then be in the discretion of the administration when and how they move forward with the project. I wouldn't be opposed to something that sunsetted authorization. In other words, in a ridiculous example, if something is appropriated this year and 15 years goes by and the project doesn't get started for 15 years, it would seem odd to me that the authorization would still be valid. But I'd be a little bit concerned that we conflate the authority of council to authorize something with the authority of council to direct something to happen, if that makes some sense.
And requesting help when needed, if anybody has opinions about this, but from my understanding of the process, it seems to borrow your language around to be more permissive than authoritative, but I think built into the back and forth process between the council and the mayor in terms of approving items. This is where I might need some opinions, but it's good that the council just say, we're not gonna put this stamp on this, go back, change it, XYZ type of way, and then we'll give you the vote that you want to have this approved or signed by the council.
Well, I guess I'm confused by the time frame question too, because if they didn't spend the money in the current fiscal year, it's gonna show up in the budget for the next year. So I don't know what the penalty would even be.
That's the problem.
So, like what?
I think, by the way, what you said is aspirational, and I think I agree with everything you said. I'm just not sure everything I'm hearing, you're gonna find a way to put this in our constitution.
Yeah,
Mandating anything, it's an aspirational, it's the right thing, but you can't dictate the timing of all this.
I think you're right, unfortunately.
Yeah, I wish I wasn't, but
Yeah.
I just, we all like to see good projects, build that.
And having the penalty be, we're taking the funds away, undermines the sense of urgency on that project.
Exactly.
I don't know what that would accomplish and like.
It'd be nice if there was a way to incentivize them getting the project done, but that's
I don't think we can build it.
without, no, I agree,
just
I
can't
should,
It's good.
So what I'm hearing.
Shouldn't be
In
in
the private marketplace, you could.
it shouldn't be
I
a
think
constant.
there is politically,
Yeah.
but that, I think through this process, I'm not speaking for anybody but myself, but I've found that council does have a lot of these questions answered if they do work together. I mean, you're mentioning an incentive. If council works together, there's certainly a lot of incentive, But as far as changing the charter to fix this question, I think you're right.
Yes.
Took notes on the fact it's important matters. There are concerns, but it's not constitutional, so I think our answer to this is no.
Yeah.
But we can put, what are the consequences for other things when there's a deadline and it doesn't happen? But we can't put consequences,
I think there might be a contract that's
like even like 45 days, that's what it's like done.
It's like what's
2 weeks, so we have to have this done, oh, sorry.
It's like if you said, we're gonna allocate money to your point earlier about a park in this particular neighborhood. And the park doesn't get built, and council says, well, we're gonna take the money away. Well, the park didn't get built
Right.
either way, right? So.
Right, and I'm not saying that is a consequence, but I'm saying, what are some examples of other consequences in this charter that if something doesn't get done, then what happens?
Well, that was what I heard earlier about those other political incentives. If council works together, there's certain leverages. I mean, that's the push and the pull between the branches of government. Specifics, I don't know, but I think generally that's the idea.
Well, I mean, any penalties, for instance, if they don't get the budget over within the next number of days, I haven't seen any penalties in here.
Yeah, then it goes to the politics of it, that you
Right.
have the, if council are not happy with the mayor, they can stop voting on things. They
Right.
can do things along those lines that deny approvals.
It's not gonna play very well in the press if they.
Right. Yeah, it is that traditional political split between.
Yeah.
The timing aspects that are in here are to stay in compliance with state law as far as the budgeting and the process. If they refuse to do that, they're in violation of state law, they could be removed by the governor. That there's other penalties that come from the outside if you're not in compliance with state law.
I think that the issue, I think from what I heard from the city council is that, yes, if you're not happy with the executive, you could play games in terms of holding up other things, but why get to those ticky-tack things rather than a clearly defined problem that will answer the questions one way or the other?
What would you imagine that could be? I mean,
You know. Requiring, I'm just making this up, but maybe. Asking formally of the executive, what is the status of so-and-so project? At least getting definition back to the city council of that,
Cause it happened today, and the council, I know our commissioners, they ask us all sorts of things.
Yes.
And that happened today in the city.
They do, and the response is, there are too many motions. Staff is spending too much time going to council responding to motions for status updates.
Well,
I mean, there are other times that seen that response before.
Yeah, that's been a response. There's certainly been items, I mean, the fire stations, safety plans that have taken years and years to.
2 councils.
Yeah, like literally, like almost a decade. And it's just never starts, it just never, gets even to the middle, like.
so I think we ran this to ground, but now I feel like we're not, we're still, we're going back to. I don't-
If this rule is added, then there will be some type of directive to finish.
Oh, we were saying it's not a constitutional issue, it's actually.
Make it one,
It's my
and-
understanding.
Okay.
I don't.
That's what I said about teeth, like, I'm supportive of it, I love the question, I think it's great, and if, maybe we should vote on it and see what council comes up with.
If the fire stations get done, the fire station get done.
You know, as long as we should have a chance to provide. Sure.
So observers of council will note that I think part of a response that council has demonstrated over maybe the past 2 or 3 years to the lack of recourse in terms of directing the budget is that they've started to have more and more meetings about the budget earlier and earlier on in the process, because I think historically it's kind of been a last minute bang, here's the budget vote, thank you. The administration just gets what they want, but the recent trend has been, all right, well, let's actually look at this, let's figure it out, like this is part of our job, let's do it all year long. And if that trend continues into the next term, 2 or 3, and it becomes a part of our political culture, then that kind of circumvents the problem we have here. It just becomes what they do.
Any other comments on this?
Yes,
Go ahead, thank you.
I'll be short, or I'll try and be short. There have been instances where things have taken a long time. Fire stations is a really good example. Once things get put into the budget, there are a number of reasons. And Stephen, I mean, you mentioned some of them, and I know that you know this. There are a lot of reasons that things don't move as quickly as not only city council is like, but as the administration would like. And sometimes they disagree about, what those reasons are, and they have different priorities, and members of city council have different priorities. But there's a lot of different avenues that city council utilizes to move things forward, and they eventually usually get what they want. Do they always get what they want when they want? No. But neither does someone who's in the administration as the mayor get everything they want done what they want, because that's the reality of the world and the things that they have to balance. But city council utilizes extremely effectively their political power to bring things up over and over again. And you're right, Stephen, sometimes they say, the administration does say, you're overburdening staff, there are too many reports back and forth. But when they continue to bring them back, it's continued to be discussed, and it gets in the paper. And if things are unreasonably delayed, there's political consequences to that. So I'm not seeing a really good example of something that has been unreasonably delayed, that there hasn't been ramifications and things have balanced out and that they've been moved forward. And I do have concerns. I guess we're now no longer talking about like unilateral budget amendments, but we're now moving on to consequences of not having things done in a timely manner. But there's so many different reasons that things are not done, that to craft some sort of language and then some sort of penalty short of, I mean, nobody has suggested what that would even look like, other than the item is taken off the agenda, which gets no one anywhere what they want. I feel like there are currently a lot of political tools, and I see those tools used every Thursday pretty well. So I'm not really clear exactly what's trying to be solved, except sometimes projects are extremely difficult to get moved forward, and it takes really diligent public officials on both sides to move them forward.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's a really good point in summary. Ashley.
Thank you. I wish Allison was here and she could speak because she would be able to speak to this for District 5. And how projects get approved, but it does not move forward. And there's no deadline or any type of, like in the tunnel type situation, they just know, oh, we got approved, but it's not gonna move forward. And so, like, this is another instance where I'm saying, where it may not be a problem for the greater areas of Tampa, but for that area, you drive through it, there's some things that should be done, but they're not done. And they're not taken seriously, or they're not prioritized for whatever reason. So I probably I'll have to tell her to come up during public comment next time, but there are plenty of projects that the funding is there and it is approved, but it does not move forward. So what I am saying is if it became a rule, and there's not, penalties aren't listed in here for a lot of things, but they have dates, and this needs to be done in 45 days, this needs to be done in 2 weeks, and this needs to be done 3 weeks before the fiscal this and that, and there's no penalty if it doesn't happen, if it's the rule, it's just the rule. Now, let's say in an instance where things don't happen how they're supposed to happen, then I guess that's that person's job, because you didn't do your job. Whoever's in that department that's supposed to be running that, project manager, that's your job to do that. So, I'm sorry if I sound like I'm just getting, I get passionate about this.
I think
No, but respectfully, I'm not sure that when a project gets approved, when funding gets approved, it doesn't mean that all the details are worked out and approved. And I honestly think it would be very bad policy for us to put into the charter that if funding is approved for a project, the project's got to be done and completed in a period of time, because it removes the discretion to evaluate the details and make sure that the details are good for the district and the city of Tampa. And that's, if somebody's derelict in their duties, it's a different thing, but I don't think we're going to solve that by this. And so again, I sort of feel like we're conflating the issue of authorizing something to move forward with requiring its completion. And I personally don't think that it would be a good idea to mandate that in the charter. I appreciate that there's a difference of opinions, and I respect the other opinions here. I feel like that would be bad for the city.
Could you put a limit on it and say if it's within $1 million or within, so whatever, so that you're not saying a $2 billion, $30 billion project needs to get done within a year, but if it's something small, like a $500,000 project that needs to get done.
I mean, I don't know.
Let me ask a question. If the issue was we authorize the purchase of a vehicle and we're going to authorize the purchase up to $50,000, and the vehicle we need is commercial value is $10,000, but the only person who wants to sell it to us wants to sell it to us for 40, and we're going to pay 4 times what we believe the value to be, would we be mandating that happen? It just doesn't seem like a great idea to do that. Or if there's an instance where, let's say, a roadway improvement or a bridge needs to be built, and TECO or Verizon or something is creating an unreasonable condition, it seems like we would be putting the city in a position to just have to cow down to anything that happened and spend anything within that budget to make it happen, even if the expenditure or the action is not in the best interest of the city. And I don't think that's the intent when a project gets approved.
That's not what I'm saying. If somebody comes back with a car that's 4 times what it's supposed to cost, then we just shut that project down or just go find a different car, get different bids, whatever needs to happen, so that happens within that budget.
I think it would be helpful to hear from Allison. It would be helpful to hear if there's a process, because she's somebody who's worked with government, worked with the state level, to see if there's a process to see, you're trying to incentivize good behavior and have an analysis, even if they have to report back in a certain timeline as to the status of the project. So that gives you a public exchange, that it doesn't just get buried in departments. I would be leery about setting a timeline that you had to execute on the project, because you have to go through like bidding and making sure you got decent contractors, they got bonding and.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that goes into that.
I hear what you're saying.
And I just want to start taking.
Oh, could you go?
No, I agree. I just wanted to point out, it does say in the question, such as allocations for paving. Maybe, you know, to your point about limiting it to $1 billion, maybe if it's within the city's regular operations, like certain park improvements or paving roads, maybe there should be a title on that. But to your point, if it's a project where it's in contract and all this stuff, like
There are large things across projects that have different.
Sure.
It's not
Yeah.
always necessarily a failure, it could be a scope change.
Absolutely, market it all.
But there are all kinds of things that goes into that.
But I just wanted to point out, my whole point was, it does say paving. Maybe we could clarify from council if they were being specific to certain improvements.
I think there's one question around plumbing, the other is managing projects and timing.
Or do you think that was specific?
Well, I think it's a good example, but I think it says light paving, so I'm not saying paving there. That's an example, but I think
I mean-
it's along that line. Yeah, I think it's a
Well,
good
he
example.
wants a lawyer, so I don't know if
So-
they're in that deep.
You know, say something, yes. So going back to things like Rebecca's points that people actually do rally around these things to get exposure, there's political pressure. To your original point that you wish it were, you could do more, but it's constitutional, I mean, your point. I mean, I think what we're really, the most I could see, but I've brought up to the group to consider is really around a status report, a forced status reporting process. Because you really don't even know what that status report might be, they may have very good reasons for it, and they may have heard bad. But I don't know that constitutionally, maybe Oakland can, you know, requiring like projects over a certain amount to be statused. Is that too procedural and prescriptive for something like a charter that really is talking about
Yeah, that's.
the mutual roles? That's my question, I don't know how close we get to that, because
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to change the balance between executive and legislative. So that can be done. It's
Would
just.
statusing change the power, just to say that
No,
projects of a certain value need
it would
to
be
be
taking.
annually, you know, you go over budget, progress issues, projected, you know, like bringing some, shining some light on this situation versus interminable time being taken to get it done.
It would be taking the process they have, which is to request reports, updates. And turning it into a mandated process within the charter that was triggered by such and such date. Whatever you want to put a year on it, you want to put 6 months on it, something that forces an update to council on the status. That's the path I'm seeing from this discussion, if you were getting into something like that.
So right now, just a second. Just one thing, just one thing. So council today could basically.
Council does
staff
right.
to give them status updates. So they have a mechanism to be educated about the scenarios that would be leading to overages, cost overruns, schedule overruns. Does that not happen today?
Yeah, I think we should get away from saying, well, council can just request this, council can just request this,
Does that mean?
because they could request information about everything they're asked questions on, there's a reason why they're asking it, you know, and I don't mean to seem
No, I'm just.
direct that frustration at you, but I think they know they can request things from departments, they're not asking us what their powers are.
Yeah.
These are they're probably examples behind every one of these questions about how they requested something either as a body or individually, and they get a response, so.
That's the difference, some of it different.
I don't mean to put it back on
So
them, but
this gives them,
they gotta give us something, like paving, like let's lash on to something and say. Was there an issue with paving last year? I don't know, I mean. Because I agree with you, I do think that money is spent in certain parts of the city very easily, and even when it appears to be difficult to spend money there, it is very obvious on the paper that they are trying really hard to spend money. But other areas, none of that happens, and I don't know how to explain that either.
are we back to asking for more than on this? Is that what we need?
And who are you asking?
First
My
question.
council?
We help them with Allison.
I think Allison
Yeah.
seems to have most.
She's very well versed on the projects that I know.
Well, what did you just say, what you did, they're late, I don't know why, or not happy?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I mean, like, what is she gonna tell us about? More
Oh,
than
I know what
that?
you're saying.
Like, we take what you said for granted, it's
Right.
true, so if that is the case,
Well,
but regardless, it's the general idea of accountability, finishing things on time.
what we trying to make
Let us know that time for sure.
Yeah, we can have that, yeah.
But I think the bigger point is, what would the repercussions be? You know, like if there was a time limit, what would happen if that time was?
Shut off is that.
But I do, what you said earlier though, about there are many instances in the charter where it has 45 days or one is different, you know.
Yeah, and that's
Timelines. Yeah, I agree with you.
But those are of a different, somewhat different nature. For projects,
I understand.
you can't arbitrarily impose time on projects, you just can't. You could arbitrarily say you want to update on that.
I don't know, though,
Right,
for
you
paving,
can't say per project what that looks like.
I don't know, I think if funds were approved for particular paving or potholes, they could certainly be, those projects could be completed within a fiscal year.
I mean,
Depends on the
it's
scope.
partly shared priorities.
Right, but
That depends on the scope.
You know, I take everyone's point that some of the, there are things in certain projects that you can't put a time limit on because they are factors beyond control. And maybe this is a less important thing, but let's say the city council approved $25,000 to build a statue to Tom Brady.
okay. Here we go. Go ahead. Cause that's, you're good, cause they gonna do their job, but go ahead.
But the statute, you know, and it's a pretty straightforward thing. But for whatever reason, it's just never done.
That statue's gonna get built. Let's say the statue of Steve Black Andrews over in the block, right? Whoever is gonna do Tom Brady statue, for some reason, that person's gonna do their job and everything's gonna happen smoothly. But over here, for Steve Black Andrews, the statue doesn't get done for whatever reason. Because somebody's not doing their job. Am I
Don't
speaking?
be guys,
So first of all, you're never gonna have somebody show up for a staff report and say, I wasn't doing my job. They're gonna say, we put the RFP out, we got your responses or our cost estimates. I mean, they're gonna gaslight. Just let's be real about that.
Yes.
But the second part of it is, I think instead of asking Allison for examples, we should ask Allison what the solutions are.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because kids have probably thought about what the mechanism should be, and I don't know what that is, I mean, it may have something to do with the fact they're asking to be able to re-budget stuff in the middle of the year, but let Allison come and.
And I
Okay,
think.
so Allison keeps coming up, I'm gonna make a note, we're gonna have her talk about it, I mean, we'll be here an hour, we're gonna talk about this.
Yeah, okay.
I'm guessing you guys love it, but not that much, so let's Allison talk to us, if you guys find anything else out between now and 2 weeks from now, great.
It would be interesting to find out from Ken, and maybe there's a way to find out if other cities have some either, you know, timelines or qualifiers on this, like, I just think if you ask for a data update or you've asked for something, there should be some report back in some time frame. I don't know, I just find that like burying projects or burying requests for information, I don't think is a constructive way to.
We can certainly take a look and see if there's other charter requirements like that.
Yeah, and maybe it's not a charter, you're right.
Can I ask one other question too? And if we, and Ken, you probably don't know the answer offhand, but maybe you can help us next time with it. The types of projects we're talking about, are those projects initiated by the administration and then the budget is approved? Or are there the city council have the ability to itself, without consulting with administration, initiate its own project? So for instance, I'll use paving as an example. Can city council on its own say, we're gonna build a sidewalk on this particular street and we're approving that and it's got to get done? Or do those projects come through the administration?
Yeah, that I can answer just based on our prior discussion about the budget process. The city council can make requests, the initiation of the item has to come from the mayor and her staff.
And so in light of that, I mean, again, it just seems strange to me that we're talking about administration comes to council and says, we're going to do a project, right? It's initiated by the administration. And then we're going to tell the administration that if you do that, we're going to set a time frame for you to have to get it done. It would seem to me that I don't know, it just seems odd to me to impose that kind of restriction when really what's happening is council's appropriating money for something that the administration's asked to do. And then we're gonna put in the charter that there's a time frame on getting that done.
I don't think that's strange at all. I think we're asking them to do their job. I can't come get hired somewhere and
Yeah.
not,
It's-
like,
It's,
be able to do that for so long and come and not have to report and then expect to stay there. Me, as a woman, I can't do that. I can't do that. I have to do my job. And I understand there's barriers, things may come up, or something just naturally may take more than a fiscal year. Then you state that up front. This is going to take 3 years to do. But if it's something small. And stuff gets thrown up all the time around here in Tampa, so I don't understand, like, I don't know,
Well-
we live in two different realities right now.
what's an example of something small?
Like I said, a statue.
Like
Or-
like building a fire station is something small, or paving a road?
Maybe the road, I guess, is small.
Sorry?
Much cheap.
But doesn't a statute have to go through some sort of review committee to sort of see if it's appropriate, and I'm sure there's all that, like, yeah.
So a couple of thoughts.
Yeah.
Move
So
on.
yes, let's use the statue. If we did that, but my guess is, somebody mentioned Tom Brady, I didn't mention it, but my guess is Tom Brady's likeness is copyrighted. So if we decided to do that, my guess is somebody's got to negotiate a copyright agreement release with Tom Brady's people, and that might take a year, right? So how it's strange, because it's presumptuous for us as a group of 9 people to put into the charter a time frame, when we're talking about a extremely wide variety of circumstances of again, items that the administration has initiated and council's appropriated. And I mean, if I was the administration, then I would just stop initiating projects if there was a mandate to get them done within a period of time that was rigid.
Well,
We're gonna bring a speaker in.
So I need to do 2 things before we move on really quick.
That was a speaker.
And did you say you were going to look to see if any other charter handles the concept?
Yeah.
Of holding, that's my first. The other. Hold on, I need to write this clearly, because I just cited for later. Research. Where we got just for a second. I think the other thing I'll leave you with before we move on. Is even if. Even if we have to get to the point about what the consequences would be, I think when we think about this, right? So, okay, so we're late. What then? So constitutionally, what then? So let's lead with that, we'll move forward. You know, so it's one thing to say get it done on time, what happens when you don't, really? The council can't hire and fire for. Alright, we're gonna go on to 7.03.
Yeah, but you get held accountable in the public domain, that's my only point, you know, if you say stuff and you don't get it done. People, if that was written practically, people would be like, to Ashley's point.
Right.
You got a job, report back to the clock, just have to be time.
But I think the point, that's what Rebecca said, right? There's a lot of political pressure, both on
Correct.
mayor and on council when things aren't happening.
Right.
Right, everyone's watching, because there's a consequence, you don't get any of those done, or they're all late, you don't get to feel it. So.
Maybe it's my, because
I'm not
that
sure
person's not doing the job.
Alright, 7.03, the amount, if I raise my voice, I figure we'll keep going.
Go ahead.
Yeah, something we're gonna screen it, the amount of salary or wage for each office position of all officers and employees shall be fixed. And specified separately in the annual budget, however. Where there is more than one officer position with the same salary or raise and aggregate salaries or wages. Okay, the mayor may increase salaries for employees. All employees other than charter officers, or as otherwise provided herein. And may employ necessary additional employees out of surplus funds. And within the limits of any appropriation for salaries, basically freedom to. Change salaries and or bring more staff on within the power of managing. The administration of government. Do we have any changes to 7.03? What's going to us? Okay. 7.04. Interim budget. Between the beginning of the fiscal year and the adoption of the annual budget. The city council, upon recommendation in writing of the mayor, may make appropriations for the purpose of paying salaries, principals, interest. It's really keeping government open. It sounds like indebtedness, compensation for the normal expenses. and the appropriation survey will be chargeable to the supplemental appropriation respectively. Made in the annual budget for that fiscal year, and changes to 7.04. Once going twice.
Remove it.
Why is it called an interim budget?
It's basically a catch-all, in case there's a breakdown in the process, they have the ability to.
Okay,
Millage. Once the budget's adopted or sooner after, the council shall determine the amounts by which may be necessary for the carrying on. Of government during the next fiscal year from ad valorem taxes and shall proceed to fix the millage or tax necessary. Which millage as so determined shall be certified by the mayor to the public authorities. We all understand that? Me, are we okay with it?
That's our project, yes.
Okay, so we can
So, right, we can't touch this, it's legally not.
Okay. 706, nothing in this charter shall be construed prohibiting city council upon recommendation or approval of the mayor from raising revenues from taxes or other sources from time to time as the occasion requires for municipal purposes when the same have not been provided for the last preceding annual budget. It sounds like they can use tax dollars to run government needed it, wasn't done the prior year or something. Any changes to 706? Any? Seven oh seven, budget changes, city council,
Remove.
on recommendation of the mayor shall have power from time to time during the fiscal year. After adoption of the budget. By resolution to reappropriate to any municipal purpose, any funds. Not needed for the purpose originally appropriated, or to appropriate, wow, any unappropriated, you better be kidding.
It's there, hello.
It says, no, it says upon recommendation of the mayor.
Oh.
Yeah.
On the recommendation of the power
It's kind of redundant.
during the fiscal year,
Other section.
after the budget. Sorry, this is me missing word, to reappropriate. For any city purpose, any funds not needed. Because they weren't needed from what they were originally appropriated or. Basically just saying that extra money and where you need to use it, they can appropriate it to use it somewhere, are we okay with that one?
what were those?
7.07. Yes, okay, great. Last one, 7. Of course, that's this one. Okay. Diversion of funds. Can't divert funds raised by taxation, settle bonds, other than that, which they were meant to be used for. I'm summarizing it that way, you guys can read this, any changes to 7.08.
I got more rings for it. So that project alone. Needed, that was to.
But once going twice, I think there's some changes. Depositories and disbursements. All right, all the money belonging to the city. Which can come into the hands of any officer of the city by virtue of such office. Shall be deposited or regulated for those. I guess we're saying funds come in, they get deposited, reports shall be made. About that, so we know what's going on with the funds. This is very nitty gritty stuff, any changes to this, I'm not gonna use that.
But what happens if they don't do it?
Is that historical?
They don't,
I mean, I don't know, who
they
you
get
was,
fired,
sorry,
they get fired,
who's they?
whoever, if they don't do their job, they're probably for the disbursement. I'm saying like, what if the person doesn't do their job, and like one of these rules that are written in this charter. If the person doesn't do what is said in here, there's some type of consequence, but every consequence is mapped out in this document.
So you're asking about the entirety of the charter,
Yeah.
not just this.
Yes. But yeah, just this, like what happens.
But I mean, your point is, if people don't do what the charter says needs to happen, what happens and all that's kind of the question.
Well, I think this language goes back to when the city was operating more on cash basis with people, that the mandate that they put this in a depository, have a regular process when it comes down to it. With all of these actions, if someone's not following what the charter has said, then it's up to their hiring authority to enforce that. And this is typically the mayor, as far as discipline, along those lines. If something, if money's walking out of the building, then it's potentially a crime, and then will be investigated by those folks.
Any changes to this one? This is very sexy section, no.
The money is very.
Investment of funds. Director of Finance with consent and approval by mayor may invest funds. The city has. And not invest in mortgage securities or which represent participation in or collateralized by mortgage loans secured by real properties. That's a limitation to the investments. City is also authorized to invest in treasury bonds, certificates, notes, or may arrange interest time deposits with depositories. And that accrues as per normal interest. Furthermore, the city may invest in special funds. For which the city is required by agreement or by law to credit such special funds with interest on its invested funds. He changes 7.10. I'm gonna do audits and take a quick break. It's okay with you guys. Audits, the mayor, with concurrence, are subject to the approval of the city council. Shall appoint and negotiate each year contract with an independent CPA, meeting the criteria, therefore. For the performance of all financial accounts. Failures of the mayor, the city council will cause the audit to be made as grounds for recall of said officers. That's a pretty big deal, obviously. We okay with 7.11? All right, well, guys, that's all. Let me take a 10-minute break. I'd like one if that's okay. Sure. And then we'll jump into 8, which.
So if we're gonna jump into A, just now, I did.
6 and 7.
So I'm fine, but I'm gonna have to read it.
Understood. Tell you what, if we feel like as we're getting into this, that it really does require more homework. You guys tell me what you want to do.
We'll read it very quickly.
That was basic on our progress before, but now but let's take a few minutes, take a break, and then we'll come back. And if you even need a couple more minutes to kind of scan just quickly.
Pretty well.
So, is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I read it.
I didn't actually know the things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm saying that machine, I gotta read it.
There you go. Standard.
Oh.
With Jason. We worked through.
I don't. Let me tell you, really, wow. I feel like maybe there's just like a bubble house into on the internet or something else. Old lockers are actually so, so many things got a lot of, obviously it's got a lot of institutional people. Yeah, I also, I think it's.
We're getting started again, everyone. On the other, but I don't know. Are they there? Are you guys there?
Oh, Ron. I was there talking.
Yeah, we're here.
Okay. I'll just go back through this.
It's 7:50.
Is that what you guys know?
It's not 8 o'clock.
One hand, come on, it's
Under back to the others.
Just like to use my memberships.
Notes you get around about, don't, I don't think Brian Hughes can't.
Thank you for the break. I saved. We'll tap it there too. We are. In a section, of course, you guys didn't get a chance to probably prepare for. Let's see how good we're good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Not bad. But we are now in section 8, which is awesome. So jump in, this is contracts and bidding. 801, every contract made by the city should be approved by council with recommendation, upon the recommendation by the mayor, signed by the mayor, and attested in the official city seal tax file. So basically, the mayor brings those contracts to council, council approves, so we go, okay, with it, put on one. Okay. Eight point zero two variables, no promise or representation by any officer or employee shall be binding. Unless ratified in an actual contract, that is for permanent license approval consent. So really what they're saying is. You can say it doesn't mean anything, it has to be a contract, has to be officially.
That's the city.
Yeah, so we're thinking the same changes. Great. Is that really shortest one ever? 8103. Any contract in violation of our conflict with this charter, any ordinance of the city shall be void. Okay with that? 8.03. You. Buckle up, here we go. This is all around competitive bidding, procurement. I'm not gonna read all this, guys, but
It's a state name too, so.
so competitive procurement methods exactly. Again, you guys take a minute and look at this over what's in front of you. Any issues with any of this? It's really long, so I can read it. I'll leave it right here for those who don't have the chart in front of them. Tell me when you still, you can see it. Scroll a bit more. There's some exceptions around emergencies. And I know that happened in the county with. When we had COVID, we had more authority for the administrator on purchases. Emergency procurements are called. So I'm assuming that's pretty much the same concept. Honestly, I think all this procurement competitive stuff is pretty solid and it's been that way for a long time. That's any changes to this, what you guys think? No, 8.04, okay. I don't want to rush you, but I think you think that's precise. Supplemental provisions 8.05, so basically saying after ads, if no bids are received, was originally advertised. More bids are the same, or was received, the contract may be awarded to one of the bidders. Or bids susceptible to appointment. Where the bids are for machinery equipment. So again, it gives you flexibility depending on how things come through this solicitation process. Any changes to 8.05? Okay, look at 06 when I'm doing that. There you go, good going. 8.06. Splitting. No contract or purchase shall be split for the purpose of avoiding competitive bidding. Okay with that. Located at 27. Conflicts. No officer or employee. Or individually to the firm they're part of, or any corporation. Of which they hold shares shall receive. Any substantial benefit or profit from any contract or obligation entered into with the city. Or have a financial interest in effecting any such contract or obligation. In the event of a violation. By elected officers, same shall be grounds for the recall in the event of a violation. By any other officer or employee, obviously the person offending shall be immediately removed or discharged. Good.
Yeah, that's a state one anyway, but that was on the employee or the employee. Office.
All right. Okay. Let me just do a check one with you guys. I mean, I think we're cruising. Do you want to go? Do you want to keep trucking or do you want an earlier night since I have a feeling, I'm not presuming again, that a lot of these will be fairly quick. I'm good to the bitter end if you are for today. It's up to you. Keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, boards, we're on 9. Might be done before I was at. Until tonight, I'm right now. I'm thinking our chances just went up. Okay. Boards, there shall be a civil service board, board of trustees. For the retirement fund, firefighters and police officers pension. The appointments, terms, responsibilities. Provided under law, by special law, there should be a variance review board. To determine responsibility determined by ordinance, this should be a substanding board that may be created by ordinance, ad hoc committees may be created by resolution. Upon the recommendation or with the approval of from there.
This 9 point, guys are gonna hate me, 9.01 is. Very, very similar to 6.01 in the language. Seems kind of redundant again, with tendencies scrolling, so I don't know.
I think I'm looking at that same thing. I'm going to age. No.
I kind of wanted to.
We're not gonna stop.
I mean,
I know these are left over here, so.
if you got red 9, I would be in favor of just absorbing 9 into other sections of the charter. That's. Nothing in 9 other, I mean, they could all go with the conduct of government.
You're saying all of them?
I think, but yeah, I think here, I don't know what I boards are covered up above, obviously this is day. Thoughts, Ken, on that? Is it the same or you see a different reason for including it?
It establishes these board members as officers, that's what section 6 deals with. But then it calls out that they're mandated to have these boards. So they're different in terms of what they execute on. I think it's more. This section came from 1986 and been amended over time. So it could be consolidated. If
I mean,
He does.
I do, I'm just gonna be totally frank, why would you have? Information is 95% alike in 2 different parts of the charting, just why?
I don't know the answer as to why I ended up here and there. What's the pleasure of the group? We feel strongly enough to consolidate.
19, you said 6.01 and 9.01?
6 is about the conduct of government.
They got they have different.
This one talks about creating other boards and committees.
Isn't it precisely the same language?
That's not precisely, and then 6.01 says there needs to be officers for these boards, here are the boards, 9.01 says here are the boards.
So does the 6.01 require this to be in effect so that the officers assigned to them? Do they play off each other or are they saying the same thing?
They play off each other in that it requires the board to be officers to make them. This mandates the creation of them. So we have to take some of this language and put it into six, and I don't know if that makes it more confusing or not. Right now, they get their own section. While still making laws.
I don't know why we would send this, but I hear your point on this. This one, why we send this to voters to. It's not unclear, I mean, it's, they deal with different things, very good size, I don't think it's put it in.
Creating, it's more like just a streamlining, but you know, it's not like a hard hitting controversial topic at all, you know.
Either, I'm kind of on the, see what you're saying, just.
You could say 6.01, there will be these boards. Those boards will have these officers.
Is there a difference between 6.01 talks about receiving compensation? And 9 does not, so is there a difference between boards where you receive compensation and 9?
Well, 9.03 addresses compensation for these boards.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Well, it just says it could be set by ordinance, you said it 0. But if we were to consolidate this, we'd have to bring in these other provisions and work 6. Can be done, it's just a question of you want it.
These state statutes, they're a bit different, so would there be a reason why they be different, like the numbers?
Say that again, that's
Can you solve state statutes or laws, ordinances? So they're different.
Yeah.
From 6.01 to 9.01.
Something in reference to.
Yeah.
Different authorities.
This word,
Does that
it's
happen?
like word number 9251.
Yeah.
So that is just where they updated it in the past.
Okay.
So it'll be different.
Last amended compared to the 70s charter.
I just don't keep this, I think you can add other boards to it, and I pulled it in, but
Yeah,
the other title, it doesn't really fit, I mean, it's sort of a.
I was just gonna do that, does anyone else share Bobby's feeling that this rises to the level of a change or recommendation? Going once, come twice, then move forward. Yes.
They can add. Mayor can create board.
It's simple, let's just keep us moving. Personnel. Each board with the advice of the Senate mayor shall appoint, power to appoint and to remove a director. Shall execute the administrative policies, etc. Manage the personnel. Except that the chief building inspector shall be issue director of the zoning adjustment board. The mayor within budgetary limitations is subject to civil service requirements shall employ such additional personnel for each board as shall be necessary. Any changes not put on to.
I mean, I'm sorry,
Everybody.
I don't know that it rises to the level of changing it, but I'm not sure that there is a zoning adjustment board. And it's odd that they changed all the other ones. I think the last time that Ron was here to get rid of the committees and the boards that no longer existed, and this one didn't get caught, but I'm not saying it rises to the level of a change. I just don't think that that exists anymore. Well, or that the building officio is the ex officio. There's a variance review board. And that's referenced in a different section.
If it seemed like it doesn't exist,
We should clean it up.
clean it up.
Rebecca, I would clean it up. It doesn't exist, it should be on there.
I mean, if it does, it's really low profile.
So is it action for us to
Find
confirm,
out if it exists or not.
check, and then decide? Okay. So we're looking at this zoning adjustment board, so action is to.
I do think we should talk about zoning. I mean, at hearing Mimi say, what do the residents have challenges with? I'm not sure the zoning is, it's not in the chart.
And they got an agenda.
Zoning is a creation of state law and case law. I mean, that's my opinion as a land use attorney.
Okay.
There's not a lot of room in the charter to make changes to state law or case law. But if there's something specific that somebody wants to talk about,
There are
I'm not
plenty,
gonna shut down the conversation.
so find out if that board exists and then take steps accordingly, get back together. Okay, 9.03, members of board shall be compensated. Receive compensation by ordinance from time to time. Pending enactment, members get what they're already getting. My words, you guys just get anything from 9.03. Wow, we're at 10. This is getting really exciting. I'm just saying, better slow roll and woo. All right, well, I'll ask the question again, keep going on 10.
I think we've had too much discussion, and it's been great discussion, but we've kind of, steamrolled over a bunch of things. When we get some harder decisions, it's kind of like, okay, we already talked about that.
Yeah.
We've already discussed that.
That's what, yeah, we were able to do that to some of those items, so. Do you guys want to embark, dive into 10? It's not much later than the last time I asked you, but you haven't had a chance to really look at this. We only have, I think, one after this, which is 11. I'm up to you guys. I mean, we normally, I keep on with them pushing. We've got a lot done today. We have some action items. We only have 2 articles left. I'm hoping that knowing every part of it, that much of this is like what we just did. So I'm thinking maybe an early end, and then we get back together in 2 weeks. Clean up the rest. Might be able to come pretty close to finishing, but after what we just did, I feel pretty good. But I don't want to speak to you. Is that okay? Please. I think they would be. That's about me, but okay. And that's somebody you want to push on.
Just a quick comment about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Because I think 10 does have a pretty pertinent section in it which deals with a special, a bunch of special elections. And we had a really recent example of that, and I know probably some people here were following along with the special election ranks. I think there was a good fodder for understanding what went well and what didn't go well. So just to point that out, that we have some pretty recent examples, so talk to people about it.
Yeah, but I would also say there's nothing stopping any of you guys, if you want to chase down some things to help with what we're about to talk about, send them to me and I'll go do that. Or can we? So probably to your point, if there's something specific, let's get ahead of it and maybe bring something to the party and get back together. As opposed to being in the same place we are now and having to do it anyway. So that goes for anyone. If anyone wants us to do a dig, I mean, obviously do it sooner rather than later, 2 weeks is quick. But if you can, we can turn it on pretty quickly. Hopefully get those answers and get back to you, so. Okay, so we will do that. Rebecca and Ron, we're going to adjourn here in a minute.
Oh, no, we said, okay, hold on, did we vote?
No, yeah, I was.
That's not new business.
I didn't get any good when I said you need.
Cause you was doing like this the whole time.
Was.
I'm okay.
So
What? We wanted to vote on.
I mean, who wants to start? I just wanna make sure you guys have a chance to look at this, I think that's part of it, but
Okay,
if you all have and you've already read it,
Start at 10, yeah.
what's that?
I do not start at 10, yeah.
Raise your hand if you want to continue. Alright, we're going to not continue. That means we can run another one. But I will say too, the more you prep for it, it's faster, and if you get any questions, it's faster, and I'll chase down those actions, Karen will too. And you know, by next time, hopefully clean up all the way up to 10. Maybe even get through 10 and 11 or real close, so that's great. I was really thinking we were gonna go record August. At this rate, we might be looking at 2 more meetings. If that's what you want, I don't, either way.
I wanna get into new business or what.
Oh, one more thing on the timetable for the budget. Could we bring in someone from contracts to talk about if city council had a time frame on budget, how that would affect the city issuing contracts for contractors to accomplish projects for contract administration?
Yes,
Yeah,
I need you to say that again, though, because I need to
So-
understand it.
you could go back a few.
I don't.
Where were, yeah, we were talking about city council putting a time frame.
Well, back to this thing where,
Or
Q4, could we add to Q4? I mean, I'd love to hear what the group says, but someone from contracts at the city talk about how that might affect city contracts for park improvements or whatever it may be.
you're saying so back to council mandating time limits
Correct.
on projects.
Correct. And I'm asking if it would be okay,
What's the
if the
negative one?
group says it would be okay. If we could have someone from contract administration come in and talk about how that might affect contracts the city has with contractors for projects. I mean, if city council is gonna say, hey, we have a time limit on this project being done for these funds allocated. I think we should probably hear from someone at the city staff level to talk about how that could affect contractors bidding jobs.
I think it's broader than contracts. It's your project managers. It's contracts are part of the project, right? But if the board were to. If the board were to mandate some kind of time frame on this, wouldn't contracts go out and do a procurement to get the job done by the time presumably that. If the council had an authority, they wanted it done by.
I don't know, maybe the contract administrator could say, hey, if you put a time frame on, I'm gonna have half the amount of viable contractors that could do this work.
You know, yeah, so I'm just asking something, if I could add.
I just wanted to bring it up before we moved on to. the-
Yeah, this is serve the pool of qualified people to do the work,
Yes,
if you set line payments, I mean, it's sort of. There have to be places that incent this, because it's the only way you get government to do work legally with going through these processes. Quickly, and I know when I was a contractor running a contract business that was LD, so you missed the deadline, you were paying liquidated damages, and that incentivized you to get the project done. In real time, and then you had incentives if you got it done early, so. I don't know, I mean, it just strikes me as there's some ways to maybe think about government differently, and that is, I think it's worth talking to the contract person and find out. How it would affect the bidding process.
is anyone else, is that cool? I mean, otherwise, Allison's fine, of course, but.
I think it's gonna be the first priority.
More information.
Yeah. Positive.
Do you wanna broaden the question? I just don't, a narrow question, may get a narrow answer. Contracts is but part of what that could cause, and I don't know if you're interested in. Other projects.
But every project needs, if it's approved, it needs a contract, right?
After approval, right, that follows.
Right,
You
so,
go out to bid, you figure out how you can get the work, even the time frame may change when you find out who's available, what their capacity is. You do your detailed planning, all that would shift the dates by virtue
so
of.
the contractor would drive it.
That be, not contracts,
It's multiple departments.
like Abby would the director of. Would,
Depends on what kind of contract.
Yeah.
it depends on the project.
Right.
So if it's a CCNA statute, that would be contract administration.
Maybe we start with Allison and then,
Procurement, it's a different department, just.
okay. I guess we can start with Allison, and if we need more, we can go from there.
Allison's last name and role.
she's on the.
She's in.
Oh, this there, we have that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So start with that and see where we go.
sure.
Okay, so I think so too, because that makes sense. All right.
Allison
No,
Hewitt is her last name, HEW.
No, I know, when you said Allison, I thought you were saying. you
Someone else.
said-
No, Allison,
I think she's not here, we have a lot of questions.
she's on the Zoom.
I know, but in person.
Allison's on Zoom?
Allison.
She is.
She wasn't in the beginning. She couldn't join us. Allison, are you on Zoom? No, she's.
No, open up the thing, yeah, sure,
Why didn't she still say it?
push the button. Oh, my God. Slow down, slow down.
Roll down.
No.
I get it, I get it.
It was, I saw.
She was on there, yeah.
Yeah, she's not now, she was in the beginning, I know she was in the beginning.
True.
She,
She,
we need to know.
You wanna be prepared.
Right.
Literally.
Probably.
Okay,
All right, new business.
All right, you ready?
is there any business?
I have a couple things.
Yeah, fair.
Just suggestions, and I don't know where to go with this, so one is, I really do agree with what our speaker spoke in public, you know. Where are there ways to efficientize this, or are the residents being served? We spend a lot of time between the city council and the mayor. Getting all their authorities and responsibilities and really sort of getting more information, but. How are the residents getting served by the charter? So maybe we should just think about that when we meet in 2 weeks. I don't know, I mean. It goes to some of this just getting back to people, like, you know, whether it's some incentive or some, you know, accountability. And the other thing, just, and again, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a master, whatever planner, but I did have a conversation with the speaker of the city council, or the chairman, or whatever his title is, Alan. You know, we really need a professional planner for the city, or a zoning person, because these guys come into these offices and they're not qualified to make these zoning decisions. They should be making the decision, but I think this city's getting to the size and structure of, we need a more official zoning, planning than what we have. And that's some of the feedback I've gotten, even from some of the city council members, but from a lot of the business community in town. That it's very ad hoc, it takes several years to get up to speed, people know the process, they manipulate the process, those people that know, but there's nobody really sitting back and saying, what is the city gonna look like in 5 years and 10 years, and who does that? It's not the planning committee or the planning group or department, so.
Okay. Good, no. Rebecca, did you say something?
No, I'm sorry, I did not.
Any other new business?
I had a question for the group, if I may. So I pointed out a couple sections that appear to be redundant to me, as I was reading through the charter, of course, I was looking for substantive issues that we would be discussing. But then as I was reading it, I also started to note some organizational or structural kind of formatting, if you wanna call it that, issues. I put 2 out today. Did anybody else catch that? Was that on anybody's radar, the organization of the charter, how it's laid out?
Or as how the sections are in order, or if things are.
Where information might live under the articles? Or we just, no, nobody else was thinking about that.
Like what you brought up, eliminating one section that was referred to in a different section.
Yeah.
Rob, would organizational issues be something that's on a ballot, or is that just, you know, utilizing the same language and structure and different? Because it seems to me that you wouldn't be putting on a ballot organizational changes. That's asking a lot, maybe. But
Yeah, I mean, unless we added a provision that allowed someone, the council by ordinance to reorganize the charter or something along those lines. You would have to do amendments to reorganize how it's laid out.
So it would be quite a bit.
It would be.
Yeah.
So it would be an amendment for every single
Yeah,
organizational change. We'd have to make.
Proposing.
That's 20 amendments.
Yeah,
One mess.
alright, just throwing it out there, thought I'd hear people want.
I think it's a really good point. And there's a lot of, I mean, I do a lot of drafting and I would like to go through and completely redraft it. My concern with that is you lose the if you're not making any substantive changes, it's a really good time to go in and like just rewrite everything. But if you're trying to get substantive changes in while you're also trying to make structural changes, that's super tricky to get all of that out to a constituency and have them understand it and care. So it's almost like that's a really good task at a year when you're not making substantive changes. I don't disagree with you that there are a lot of different ways that the charter could be laid out more linearly, though.
You bring it through and just like, maybe this is a personal thing, it irks me that there's a miscellaneous
Right.
article in the charter, it's like, well. I mean, come on, like,
I don't find it particularly easy to follow, and I feel like it is redundant. And frankly, it doesn't kind of go back to like, this is supposed to be a document the average person can pick up and understand. If we spend 6 months and we're still having to go back and double check things, it's like not really a good sign.
That may be a function of that the charter has been revised several times. And therefore, maybe the original flowed and but the way the city has amended the charter or reviewed it, it has created that. I mean, the US, Constitution, you have the Constitution, then you have the amendments. The original document is still there, it may have been altered, but there's probably a better flow. You could set out and reorganize it in that fashion. I think that would take a lot of time.
Can that be a recommendation to council? It's not a specific language change, just a recommendation to streamline the document.
Of the city attorney.
I mean, right, because we're not quick, so.
yeah, I
But
was,
maybe that's.
They could put amendments forward.
yeah, there. I would assume, that would be like, the legal professional would go through it, say, all right, this is kind of what makes sense, but.
Could have a public friendly reading document.
That would be very helpful.
I mean, I would just recommend they do that on an off year when they're not doing substantive changes.
Agreed.
It's just an awful lot for people to track. Here's like a substantive change, here's a substantive change, and here's how, if you don't adopt a substantive change, here's how it's gonna look rewritten. It's,
It would be a mess, to be honest.
that's a hot mess.
Good call.
But I don't disagree with your point.
Anything else from you business?
This is just for future discussion. I would like to discuss changing the provision that makes the city attorney serve at the sole pleasure of the mayor. And what I mean by that is the city clerk cannot be unilaterally terminated by the mayor. There's a sentence in the clerk section that says.
Not the attorney, the clerk.
Yeah, I'm using the clerk as an example.
Okay, sorry.
The clerk, to remove the city clerk, city council has to agree to remove the city clerk. And I believe that creates deference, at the very least, perception of deference. That the city attorney's position would also benefit from, especially given the fact that I think almost half of our questions were about city council wanting more control of the city attorney. We as a body do not agree with much of those questions, but I think there are other things we can do, this being one of them, that would create more protection for the city attorney. So that they're not going to be accused of making interpretations, especially about the charter itself, that benefit the mayor versus city council.
I took note of that.
We don't have to discuss it now, but just putting it on the record
There
that
might be other, that may work into some of the other discussions, like one of the public comments too, around a mutual third party for escalated issues too, so that could be part of that. Good, got it, this is good. I'd also encourage you to consider that last time we talked about all those public comments, things like requiring one council meeting a month to be at night so that people can attend. Don't forget that, we can skip it, but I'm guessing you guys may decide some of that results and recommendations for the council as well. So please take a look at that. And the business,
But what's the action, how do you? Cause that is a big deal, the evening,
We should call by discussion each of the items that the public brought to us.
okay, good.
Up and down.
Okay.
yeah, I had
Some,
Meeting,
a wholesome conversation about this one.
okay, so.
I'll make sure to set an agenda item for that discussion.
Yeah.
You guys need to go back and really think about what we covered before and what you've heard here. And decide which ones you really want to propose to the group that, we do something. Because somebody may say, yeah, no, that was it. Any other new business before our chair turns to me, okay?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. I am to adjourn the meeting adjourned at, oh Lord. 8:27.
Thank you guys, so it's got a really far. You want to go to a couple of ways, but. Yeah. Thanks.
Rating.